Hello everyone and welcome back to The Bell Life. My name is Judith Bell and today we're going to be cooking a delicious, nutritious, Jamaican-inspired meal together. We're going to be having some delicious, tender, fall-off-the-bone jerk oxtail, some garlic herb mashed potatoes, and also a medley of roasted veggies. If that sounds good to you and you want to cook with me, let's go. All right, guys, we're starting off with freshly cleaned oxtail. I also cut off a lot of the fat, and this is an important step that you do not want to skip because if you leave a lot of that fat on that's around the meat, it will render or release a lot of oil into your food, and it will be a greasy, hot mess, and you really do not want that, trust me. So make sure you take your time, clean your meat well, and cut off as much fat as possible. I can't even tell you guys how many pounds of meat this is because I was not paying attention at all, but I believe I had about 6 packs, so it may be 7 pounds or more. It's a lot of meat, but we're going to season it well and it is going to be so good. All right, guys, let's talk about some seasonings. We'll be using black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, allspice. This is a crucial flavor that you want to include, iodized sea salt, soy sauce, hot and spicy Walker's Wood jerk seasoning, extra virgin olive oil, and also some green seasoning. Mine specifically is Epis. If you would like specific directions on how I made my green seasoning, I made a video on that and I'll be linking that down in the bio. But let's talk about some veggies. We'll be using onion, green pepper, tomato, red pepper, thyme, garlic, parsley, ginger, a habanero pepper, and also some green onions. I always like to start by drizzling my meat with olive oil. This helps the seasonings to stick to the meat very well, so that's the first step that you don't want to skip. And now we season. So I'm taking my black pepper, and y'all know I don't really be measuring like that. But I'm taking my seasoning and I sprinkle it evenly across each side of the meat, but I'm doing one side at a time. Yes, we do sprinkle or season both sides over in these parts. And don't be shy with your seasonings. Be generous because you want your meat to be good. Now, I'm always generous with the black pepper and the powders and the things that don't have a lot of salt in it because it does provide a lot of flavor. But notice that there are very few things that I'm seasoning with right now that have salt in them. The only salt that I'll be adding is the iodized sea salt, the jerk seasoning, and also the soy sauce. Everything else is salt-free. So that's why you see that I'm so heavy-handed with these powders. When it comes to the allspice, I am not as heavy-handed with it because it has a very distinct, strong flavor. So I lightly sprinkle this, but you do want this seasoning to be included in the meal because it gives it that distinct taste that you need. I am adding 1 heaping tablespoon to this side of the meat, and I'll also be adding a few, I think 2 tablespoons of green seasoning. I ran out of gloves, so yes, I do have a large plastic sandwich bag over my hand, and I'm using that to season the meat. Now, I don't mind using my bare hands, but it just can be a little bit messy, so I was trying to negate having as much mess. Now guys, don't forget this is a crucial step. After you season one side and get those seasonings nice and rubbed in, you're going to turn the meat over and season the other side the exact same way. So look at me with my tongs and you see that the meat is very well seasoned on all sides. That is exactly what you want. One of the keys to having delicious oxtail that have that beautiful dark brown color is by using browning. Now, I don't have any, so I just chose to make browning on my own. I do not recommend this process because it can get very smoky and dangerous. I've practiced this a lot, and that's why I feel comfortable doing it. But I would recommend anyone new to just simply buy browning from the store. But basically, you take some brown sugar, put it in the pan on medium heat, and you allow the brown sugar to melt and turn into this beautiful amber color. That's the best way that I can describe it. But you have to constantly stir it because this really is a hazard. You really have to know what you're doing, but constantly stir it. And once it gets to that really smoky dark brown color, not necessarily burnt, but that dark brown, then you add the meat to the pan and it just gives it this beautiful, beautiful color that you will see in a few seconds. But didn't I tell y'all it's beautiful? Look at that dark brown color. It's just so beautiful. It's overwhelming to me. But you're basically going to allow it to do that on both sides. So after one side gets browned, I'm going to turn it over and allow it to brown as well. Now, y'all are about to see me struggle a whole lot because I need some bigger pots. As you can see, my pots were not ready for this amount of meat that I'm cooking. So I am struggling a bit to brown the meat, but I got the job done. After I allow my meat to brown for a few minutes while I stir it, I eventually add my vegetables and I'm going to just stir them in and allow them to cook together. Let all those flavors become friends, honey, because it is going to pay off. So after allowing those flavors to just come all together for a few minutes, I take 2 cups of water. I add it to the pan that my meat was marinating in, and you want to get all of those remaining seasonings. You better not throw that out. You need that in your food. Pour it. Yes, yes. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. Gorgeous. We love it here. The very last thing that we're going to do before putting the top on, take 1 beef bouillon cube. And you're just going to crush it up inside the pot. I like to crush it up just so those flavors can be spread across the pot. Everybody needs to experience that goodness. All of those oxtail deserve the best in life. So I'm crushing it up and just sprinkling it over. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm getting hungry just watching this. The key to amazing oxtail is cooking it low and slow. So this is gonna have to cook for a few hours on very low heat. Just as a point of reference, my stove goes up to 10 and I have it down on 4. Cover it and keep an eye on it. This is how my oxtail is looking after 1 hour. It's starting to cook down, but you really have to be patient with this meal. This is not one of those quickly done meals. You really have to be patient. I also forgot to mention that for this type of slow cooker meal, it is so important to use a pot that is heavy duty, good quality, so that the heat will be spread evenly and so that your meat won't burn on low heat. If you want some examples of this, I did a rice video where I show good quality pots. Check it out. This is how my oxtail is looking by the 2nd hour. It is pretty tender, like she's coming together, but I still think that it needs a bit more time because there were some places that I stuck my fork into where I was still having to fight it a little bit to come off the bone. And you want this meat to be fall off the bone tender, and it's not quite there yet. Also, you'll notice that the water is starting to evaporate, so it's time to add a bit more. Before I add my water, I'm adding some butter beans simply because I love them. It's pretty common in Jamaican cuisine to add butter beans to the oxtail, so I'll be adding it at this 2nd hour point. I drained all the juice off of them. I just want the beans. I did take 2 cups of hot water. I only added about 1 cup in though. I didn't want to add too much because that can throw off the flavor. Just keep in mind, the more water you add to your pot, you have to compensate in seasoning. So don't mess up your seasonings adding too much water. I like my oxtail to have that distinct jerk flavor, so yes, I did add in another tablespoon. It's not going to make it too spicy, it just gives it that kick that it needs. At this point, I allowed my oxtail to cook an hour and a half longer on the same low heat. And it's going to be fall off the bone, can't wait for you to see it. While my oxtail is cooking for that last hour and a half, I'm going to go ahead and start my sides. I went ahead and scrubbed my potatoes. I like to use vinegar, baking soda, and water. It really helps to remove a lot of that dirt, and I scrub them. And now I'm just rinsing them off before I chop them up. When it comes to making mashed potatoes, it's really important to cut your potato up into about equally sized pieces. This is so important because if you have a really small piece and then a really big piece, the small piece will be done and the big piece won't even be close to being done. So it's really, really important to make the size of the potato about the same. These are going to be garlic herb mashed potatoes, so of course I had to throw in some fresh herbs. I took some rosemary, I took some thyme and also parsley, and I tied it together with kitchen twine, I believe that's what it's called. And I also have about 6 cloves of garlic that I will be throwing in with the potatoes to boil and cook down. Cover your potatoes with water. You don't need a lot, just enough to cover them. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in my herbs. I'm also going to throw in my garlic. And one thing that I like to do when I'm making my mashed potatoes, I like to add in some olive oil. I just love having layers of flavor in the water as the potatoes are boiling. I also added in 2 chicken bouillon cubes, which I don't think I got that on camera, but I did add those in. It tastes so good that you barely have to add any seasoning once it's done. While my potatoes are boiling, I'm going to go ahead and chop up broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots. I drizzle them with olive oil and I season them with salt and pepper. I know it seems simple, but that is my favorite way to season vegetables, at least roast vegetables. I cut my oven to 425 degrees and I can't tell you how long I roasted them. A good rule of thumb that I have heard in the cooking world is roast until you see toast. So basically you want to roast your vegetables until they can be pierced with a fork, and also you kind of see them charring up a bit. That's the best way that I can describe it. After 3.5 hours, this is how my oxtail look. Oh my gosh, the color is just gorgeous. The brown is just perfect. I'm just in love with these oxtail. They are so delicious. At this point, they're done cooking, but since my other things, the mashed potatoes and the vegetables are still cooking, I just turn it to low, literally low on my oven, the lowest heat setting I can put it on because I want it to stay warm. And it's just gonna keep on getting more and more tender. I know my potatoes are ready to be drained when I pierce them with a fork and they're fork tender, basically falling apart. How much butter you add is completely your choice, but I'm adding 5 tablespoons. And I like to take butter that's really cold, chop it up into blocks, and just sprinkle it around the potatoes and just allow that butter to melt where it's at. I don't disturb it. I just let that butter just kind of melt down, and it's just so beautiful. It's so good. I thought I got the next part on camera, but apparently I didn't. But basically, after that butter melted down, I took my heavy whipping cream and I poured the majority of that into the potatoes. I wish I had specific measurements, but I just kind of feel it. So the best way that I can describe it is just to pour, mash, stir, pour, mash, stir until it has the consistency that you like. I like my potatoes a little chunky, so I don't blend them up like some people do. This is what I meant when I said roast until you see toast. The vegetables were nice and tender, but they also had that nice brown on them. And guys, guess what? We are finished. This meal was so amazing. I wish that I could just hand deliver a plate to everybody who's watching this video, but I can't. But guess what? You can make it at home. It was so good. Now, this may not be one of those meals that you can cook in an hour. This is not a minute meal. This is something that you have to pour your heart into. This is one of those feed 'em right type of meals. Like, this is a get a ring type of meal. I'm sorry, guys. I am in a very silly mood today, but I appreciate all of you so much for watching, and I hope all of you have a very blessed day. See you later.